In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the Paranormal Hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is a special night. Tonight we celebrate Memorial Day. And with me tonight is my co-host, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and podcast producer.
Good evening.
And Heather Lawson, our case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
This evening, we're going to do something a bit different. You know, we've had a lot of things over the years and over the last 3 seasons, but we want to talk a little bit about Memorial Day and, you know, in our unique parapsychology way. First, to explain a little bit about what Memorial Day is and what it is not. And, you know, I think a lot of people have some real confusions to what this is. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, it's a holiday designed for cookouts. Okay, well, we do have cookouts on that day, and I'll give you that. But that's not what the day is all about. And, you know, misconceptions sometimes lead to a lot of different things, and I like to point that out. You know, I think it's imperative to understand what our holidays are about and celebrate them as such. Memorial Day is to keep remembrance of those veterans who died for the freedoms we now share. It's not to celebrate veterans in general, although we don't want anybody not, you know, thanking veterans for their service, but it is designed for those who've lost their life. We have a Veterans Day. It's in November. That's for all those who have served. So, you know, certainly please thank them for their service. But today is to remember all those that didn't make it back, all those that made the ultimate sacrifice and you know, in service of our country. Now, the one thing about it is this has quite a bit of history to it, and I'm going to let Jennifer elaborate on the history of Memorial Day.
Yeah, so 3 years after the Civil War ended, on May 5th of 1868, the head of an organization of the Union veterans, the Grand Army of the Republic, established Decoration Day, and it was a time for the nation to decorate the graves of the war dead with flowers. And this was Union and Confederates. And Major General John A. Logan declared that it should be on May 30th each year. In 1873, New York was the first state to recognize this day as a holiday. And then by 1890, all states had made May 30th an official holiday for Decoration Day. And then, of course, we have all the other wars that have happened after that. And then after World War I and World War II, Decoration Day was changed to Memorial Day because we wanted to honor all fallen veterans. And Decoration Day had been more about just the Civil War dead. But this Memorial Day was to honor all veterans of all U.S. armed conflicts. And then finally, in 1971, Memorial Day was declared a national holiday by an act of Congress. And then at that time, it was not May 30th, but it was moved to the last Monday in May. So it's a floating holiday, right?
Yes.
So, and that is the history
a lot
of
of people don't
Decoration
understand
Day,
that.
Memorial Day.
It is a floating holiday, and a lot of people don't get that. You know,
Well, it was the 30th for so long.
Yeah, and that just recently, matter of fact, that came up in a conversation we had today about the fact it's actually not the 30th. You know, it's a floating holiday. It's always what it was fourth. Fourth Monday in the month. So it. With that being said, I always, you know, I was talking earlier, we want to make sure we know what the holidays are for. You know, it's important to remember those. And I told this story, and I want to retell it. It has to do with one of my ex-wives. And we were out traveling, and We were actually on a cruise and met these two wonderful, wonderful ladies from England, and older lady and her daughter. And we were bumming around doing a lot of things with them on the cruise, and the cruise happened to be over the 4th of July. Well, most people know what the 4th of July is, but you'd be surprised. There are people who don't know what the 4th of July is, like I'm sure there's some that don't know what Memorial Day is.
American people.
Yeah, American people. Most American people know what the 4th of July is. I swear to God, we were getting ready to go to dinner, and my wife is discussing these, and this wasn't Heather. This was an ex-wife. Yeah, no. She knows what the 4th of July is. She was discussing different things, and she looks over, I swear to God, one of these English ladies, and says, "Don't you folks celebrate the 4th of July, too?" I was going to crawl under the table. I swear I was. And it was so great, because the lady was very nice to her. She says, "No, honey." She says, "That's your celebration from your independence from us." I thought that was great. So it's very important to know what the holidays are you're celebrating. You know, it's a good thing. You know, take that as a learning lesson. You know, teaching moment. So no, love, you're celebrating your independence from us. So anyway, with having said that, this Memorial Day service, we're going to take a look at some interesting paranormal stories. I mean, it wouldn't be our channel if we didn't. And these are going to come from different veterans. And also, we're going to read from a couple of books, and one of which is by Nick Orton, and it's called Tales from the Grid Square. And Nick did a great job on this book, and we're going to read a couple of stories out of it. We've got a couple of interviews coming on live. And then both I and Heather and Jennifer found some stories we would like to read. So it's going to be a little different. Now, I will say this, okay? And I want everybody to understand that these are stories that are recounted by the individuals telling them, okay? They believe in the utmost sincerity and belief that the person recounting them is recounting them as the truth. Some will be hard to believe for some of us. Again, they were told the truth as they were exactly as they happened, and they told them with the utmost sincerity. Spirit Indiana Paranormal nor Ghost to Ghost can verify any of these stories. They may not be true. They may only be partially true. We do not know. In some cases, we have changed the names of the participants in the storytellers for privacy, to protect them and, importantly, to protect us. We'd like not to be sued this year, or any other, period. But, you know, I want you to enjoy the stories. They're very interesting. And again, this kind of goes along with everything we do on Ghost to Ghost, and I think everybody will enjoy them. So, for the first one out, I actually am going to... we're going to go to Jennifer and Fort Mifflin. So here we go.
So I'm going to give a little bit of history about Fort Mifflin. Fort Mifflin is the oldest active fort in America.
Wow.
Yeah. It was actually built by the British in 1771, and the Americans took it in 1775.
Wow.
It has had active defenses in evidently the Revolutionary War, right?
Yes.
In World War II and World War I, it was storage ammunition for the Navy.
Okay.
In the Civil War, it was a prison.
Wow.
So in 1777, 350 Americans died.
Wow.
And it was
this during the prison point, or was this?
No, this is during the Revolution.
Okay.
The British fired 10,000 rounds, cannonballs, at the fort, and that was the greatest bombardment of the American Revolution. Like I said, during the Civil War, it served as a POW.
Wow.
So not only did Confederate prisoners station there, but Union soldiers were stationed for desertion.
Yes.
And civilians were also imprisoned at Fort Mifflin under Abraham Lincoln's direction. If you opposed the war, if you were against the war,
yes,
just in general,
you could end up in Fort Mifflin.
You were thrown in Fort Mifflin.
What would eventually, like a early day Fort Leavenworth.
Yeah, kind of. And what do they call them? I know that there's a term that they used in Britain when you were against the war. It was... Oh, God. It was a nonconformist. I don't think that was the word.
Okay.
But somebody's going to know and be
Yeah,
shouting at
yep.
me right now. But, that was, if you were a pacifist and you did not believe in the war and you spoke out against it, you could be imprisoned at Fort Mifflin during the Civil War. Fort Mifflin was then decommissioned in 1954 after 183 years of service. Now, Fort Mifflin has been highly investigated by many ghost television shows.
Yes, they've been on many.
They Portals to Hell has been there. Ghost Hunters have been there a couple of times, I believe. And I was listening to Amy Bruni's podcast about Fort Mifflin and her experiences there. And she's been to a lot of forts across the nation. And she agrees that Fort Mifflin is the most haunted location, the most haunted fort that she has ever been to.
Yes.
Yes.
Was the term you were looking for objector?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So
Conscientious objector.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's what it was.
And
Conscientious
that actually
objectors.
was carried over in the United States service as well. I mean, that was the same term. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I think they just recently unearthed a new section in Mifflin that they were looking at. And I think
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. And I think that was the Casement 11. Yeah, Casement 11 was just recently opened. And actually, this ghost that we're going to discuss has possibly been seen or felt in Casement 11.
Okay.
So the ghost of the faceless man, he's appeared
Oh, I've heard of this. Yes.
in several places there at Fort Mifflin on Mud Island. And he's even appeared in the same cell where William H. Howe was held.
Oh, okay.
William H. Howe was actually executed by hanging August 26th of 1864.
Yes.
He was a private in the Union Army. He was
Okay.
supposed to be a cheerful, very nice man. He had actually been lauded for his bravery at the Battle of Fredericksburg.
Wow.
He remained on the field even after his regiment left.
Wow.
However, he was hung for desertion and killing an officer during his apprehension.
Wow.
And he was the only public hanging at Fort Mifflin. Mm-hmm. So there's some people who are like, Howe didn't desert. He was a good soldier.
Yes.
But he's stated to have left his regiment in December of 1862, but he was suffering from a severe bowel inflammation.
Okay.
The regiment hospital had been burned down, so he had money. So he went walking towards Washington, D.C., trying to find medical attention.
Sure.
He claims he couldn't find any adequate care, so he walked all the way home
Wow.
to Montgomery County.
Yeah.
And he recuperated there, and he was bedridden for months.
Wow.
And during this time, it just
That's
so
a hell of
happened,
a walk.
right?
Especially when you're already not feeling well.
Right, exactly. So during this time when he deserted, and that's in
Yes.
quotes, air quotes here, President Lincoln was getting very concerned because desertion was rampant.
Oh, yes.
And so he put a proclamation out that anybody who deserted, you're welcome to come back. No penalties except you don't get your pay.
Yeah.
By April 1st, 1863. Well, Mr. Howe's still recuperating at home, and he's freaked out, so he sends a letter to Lincoln pleading his case.
Yes.
Doesn't quite work.
Oh, boy.
No.
They come after him. We don't know if it was a Han Solo Guido type thing,
Yeah.
Greedo type thing, whether who shot first.
Yeah,
exactly. But in the ensuing struggle, Abraham Bertolli, one of these officers come to collect him, was killed. So that's why Howe...
He got blamed for the murder.
Yeah,
Yep.
he got blamed for the murder. He was put in solitary confinement,
Wow.
which were in the casements.
Yes.
Okay, during his sentencing and
Yeah,
court martial.
tenure, yeah.
Right. And then he was sentenced, and interestingly, during his sentence, he actually stayed at Eastern State Penitentiary for a time until his execution, when he was
Really?
taken back to Fort
Now,
Mifflin.
there's another haunted location. Yeah.
So they think it's him because Howe was given a bag and placed over his head before his execution.
Yes.
So that's why they think
Not
the faceless
uncommon
ghost.
for that, yes.
Right. Now, the caretaker, Greg O'Brien,
Yeah.
says that he's not sure that Howe was the faceless man because several soldiers lost their heads to cannonballs
Sure.
during
And that
forays.
happens in
That'll do
any
too.
of those battles. Yes.
Exactly. So it could be anybody. However, one of the tour guides who was in Civil War attire, those big hoop skirts,
Yes.
she was trying to walk down the stairs at Casement 11. And she had a arm prop her up on her elbow to help her go down the stairs.
Wow.
William Howe was known to be a very nice, courteous man. So it's possible that William Howe is
Very
still
good.
there at
Yes.
Fort Mifflin.
Very good. Well, and that, I tell you what, that is one of the neatest, most interesting forts there is. There really, it has a lot.
There is a lot more
like
to
you said,
it.
there's been a lot there visited. All right, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, our next story, I would like to introduce to you Bob Hughes and his wife, who have graciously decided to come online and to give us a couple of very interesting tales, which, again, I think you're going to enjoy these to no end. So we'll be back shortly. We are here with Bob Hughes. He is a special guest of mine. Not only Bob is a very fantastic individual, but he's also a great brother in the lodge. Bob, tell me about your service in the U.S. Navy.
Well, I did 20 years in the Navy. I retired in 2006 January, and went into Fleet Reserve, and then officially retired in 2013.
Outstanding. Thank you for your
Retired
service.
Chief Petty Officer. Thank you. E7.
Well, Bob,
That's
tonight
pretty much it.
they tell me you have a good story. Now, this is one that was told to you by another sailor, correct?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was a deck plate type rumor or
Sure.
story, and this would have been on a mine countermeasure ship, a minesweeper,
Okay.
the USS Defender.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking on there. It looks like it was decommissioned, evidently in 2014.
Getting old as
But-
hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. They either turn the bases into shopping centers, which I can relate to, and I'll tell you that story later, or they decommission whatever you were on. It's just yeah. Go ahead.
But not technically, just a few feet longer than what you could classify it as a ship.
Yes.
So 225 feet, I think it was. But
Yes.
if there's anybody out there that was served on an MCM, don't. I got a really bad memory, so
That's okay, and we get corrected all the time on Facebook. It happens. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But the whole story was we at when you're in port or even out at sea, but
Yes.
especially it was in port, and it was when we were in the shipyards.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have throughout the ship, you're on. You usually don't have power to the ship at a lot of times.
Sure.
So they'll have lights strung throughout the little like incandescent lights.
Yes.
Strung throughout the passageway, so it makes it kind of eerie.
Sure.
But we still
Keeps it
have
very dark.
You might still have some machinery going on.
Sure.
And security wise, you have to go down in the auxiliary and main space, which that's all we had was one auxiliary space or one auxiliary machinery room and a main space,
Mm-hmm.
or where the main engines were.
Yes.
But this fellow, he had went down into the auxiliary machinery room, and he was taking readings, and he just happened to and mind you, it's pretty dark, and all you got is these lights strung out,
Dim lights
So-
at that. Yes.
and he's got a flashlight, and of course he's looking around, and
Sure.
and he's doing his security readings. He's reading the thermometers throughout the space, and doing some machinery readings, and
Sure.
and he sees somebody walking towards the back in a uniform. Back then, we wore the Cambrai uniforms.
Yes.
With the flared
Dungarees.
pants, denim pants. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
dungarees. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But he said he's seen somebody walking to the back,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just curious to see who it was. Now he
Yes.
has security, so he walks back there, and mind you, there's no other way in and out of this space except to go through an escape hatch at the forward part of the ship.
Sure.
You can you got the main entrance and you got an escape hatch, and
And most of those were
no
dogged down.
time for anybody to climb up in through that escape hatch. He goes and he looks. There's nobody there.
Wow.
He it's just
gone.
It's just gone. Seen his back, walking away, and gone.
Wow.
Gone. And it was rumored that, and I haven't found any. It was always said that somebody had a heart attack down there in that main space,
that compartment,
or in the auxiliary space. So, and he had died. Now, I haven't been able to find it, but it was always said to be true. But a lot of other people had seen figures.
Yes.
Going in the space. And there was a few people who were afraid to go down into this.
Can you blame them?
By themselves.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah, it was pretty.
I actually, and I'll try to help you out on that. There's a book, and it's written by a guy named Nick Orton. It's called Tales from the Grid Square, Volume 1. And I read a story very close to this one, and I was trying to remember what ship it was on. It's divided by all the services, and I think it even had Merchant Marine in it. And then it has, either deployed or at sea and in port and in garrison. And I read one very close to that. Well, you'd be surprised. I think I had this old chief petty officer and a guy named Red Poling. He once said that every ship in the U.S. Navy is haunted in some way. And I truly believe that's probably an accurate statement. Anyone that's had any time seen any kind of action, you're going to get, even if it hasn't seen action, you're going to have the loss of life. It happens. It happens in training, people making mistakes. So I mean, the ability is there, certainly by any means. But no, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. Sometimes it's hard to get people on, but that's a good story. I mean, that truly is. A lot of people don't want to share what they've seen. They'll share it with us off air, but not on air.
Yeah.
So,
well, the Lexington, the Lady Lex. Now that's a museum in Corpus Christi.
I remember when they were doing landings on that. That was where they were teaching pilots to land. It's incredible. Glenview Naval Air Station. We researched that recently. It's very saddening. Glenview NAS is now a shopping center, and they've used the control tower as a decoration in the middle of the shopping center. I look at that and go, yeah. And it just, it doesn't help one's moral when you realize you're growing older. And, Roosevelt Roads, Rosie Roads, one of the biggest communication bases there were in Puerto Rico, is now a public airport. I didn't see that one coming.
Something I never, all the time, I know there's sailors out there, Marines, even CBs, because there was a big CB attachment there, I do believe. I don't know if it's still there or not, but was. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's hard to say, but, everybody spent time in Rosie Roads.
Yes.
You got like you'd come on, and the only place you could get a beer was down at the end. They had on the pier, there was and you were... And
you were limited in selection.
Right. Yeah, you had like an hour to get a beer, and then you went back out.
Oh, yeah. I haven't been there, so I don't know what it looks like this day and age.
Yeah.
But I know when I found that out, I thought, someone said that to me. I thought, no, they can't be right. I looked it up, and I thought, hell, they're right. And oh, my God, it's a public airport. And, I stopped there because I didn't want to know anything else about any other place. I mean, I figured, because I've heard several others have gone by the wayside, but, just in general, the uniform has changed so much. And I mean...
Oh, yeah. Couldn't tell you what, I mean, like I was talking to you before. Couldn't tell you where the uniforms are going. I couldn't tell you.
Oh, God, no. I remember go ahead, Jeffrey, yes, sir?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You had mentioned the dungarees.
Yes.
Did you guys change uniforms enough for maybe
several times.
Somebody to, was it possible to distinguish what era that spirit might have been from based on what he was wearing?
Oh, yes.
It would have had to have been, based on the ship was not that old. As far as Navy's concerned, because, MCMs back then, this would have been the 90s.
Okay.
Yes.
That particular ship, I'm thinking, was probably 10 years old. Maybe I have to go look at when it was commissioned.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've been on that particular.
In the 80s, one thing you always pick up is not 80s, it was in the late 70s, they changed from dungarees with the Cambrai shirt, the bell-bottom wafers, and they changed over to utilities, which was a whole new fact. Now, I don't know. I've heard tons of stories of why this is. And there's, like I said, there's nothing worse than getting older because you can get snooped by a lot of people, and I'll explain that in a minute. But anyway, so the utilities were a dark blue. They look like dicky work clothes is the only way I can describe it.
Right.
And that transition was in the 70s. And then they decided they didn't like it, and they started transitioning back to the workwear we have now. And
now, is that the same uniform as the Coast Guard was wearing?
Yes, because that's where they got it from. They got it from the Coast Guard. And so then they decided they were going with these, and that's what led to the blue digis. And, some young sailor thought it would be a really good idea to really pull my leg. And I think Bob remembers this story. We're in a bar one night, and we're exchanging stories. And I said, well, I just don't understand these orange digital camouflage. I really don't. And the story I always heard, before I tell this, the story I always heard about the utilities was that a woman came in. The Navy hired a woman designer. And they came in and said, we need to do something here. And then later on I was told that was all totally BS. That was not true. And anyway, she was the one supposedly designing the utilities. Did you hear the same story? For the utilities?
You told me.
Oh, I think, I told it to you. Anyway, I found it. Yeah. I apparently was the only one who was duped. Young officers are always someone they'll look to tell tales to if they buy them. Especially get some old seasoned, poop deck pappy chief that really wants to have a lot of fun. But when the digis came out, I was told they were chemically treated, so when they fell in the salt water, they turned orange, so it was easier to see someone overboard. And I'm thinking, damn, that's pretty intelligent. That's pretty good. That's also pretty much bullshit. That never happened. No. But I bought it for a while because I thought, that sounds reasonable. That sounds like something we would do. No.
I bought it too.
We all bought it. I think anybody heard it. It turns out, and I did get to the end of this because then it bugged me after I found I got lied to. It turns out they decided those didn't. And it isn't what you think, because everybody asks me, why do you have camouflage per ship? It doesn't show dirt and grease. They didn't have to replace as many uniforms. Yeah. Whereas with the utilities, the dungarees, they had to replace more. And dungarees were more expensive. The wafers, I understand it, the bell bottoms were made by Levi. And it was denim. It was good quality denim. I mean, I remember them well. When I was in Sea Cadets, we had them. The Cambrai, oh my God, those were great shirts. And I mean, and then you wore your Dixie cup. When they switched to utilities, they went to the blue cap, which Coast Guard had all that at the time. And then, then we started. Now, I never had blue digis, never did. I don't own a thing that has a blue digi pattern. But, I'll tell you, that was a big changeover in the Navy. And, of course, it wasn't just the Navy. Marine Corps went through this routine because they were part of the Navy. They hate it when you say that. And then the Army did it. The Army did it recently, and Heather, being an Army vet, did not like. They went back to the pinks and greens, the original.
I kind of like them.
Oh,
I always thought they were neat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's World War II era.
Everybody likes them better than the pickle suit.
Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, I would think because the ship was not that old that it would have been the dungaree uniform.
Makes sense.
It would have been a current uniform. Now we'd wear coveralls too. I mean, coveralls were always big. So you wore coveralls a lot of times. So, but it was dungarees is what the guys seen, and.
That would make sense for that. Well, they went back to after the utility, and there was a phase in, phase out. I don't think it ever cut off. Coveralls, even the officers wore, and those were great.
Yeah,
those were great. I think they started in the submarine fleet for the most part. But
submariners.
Yes.
They wore them all. Yeah, we always wore. We were, and then engineering were the only ones that could wear them on a lot of the ships I was on. It was engineering that could wear coveralls. Everybody else, you wore dungarees, or you get on some ships, you wore your dress uniform. You know,
Yeah.
you
A
wore your
carrier,
dress
it's like a
uniform,
floating,
the
it's like a floating
the
base.
working dress uniform
Oh, yeah.
up on the bridge. You know, it just all depends on who the captain was, and
Exactly. The old man made that decision. A lot of
Yeah.
times, it was something, if you're going up on the quarterdeck, well, then you had to put your dress uniform on if you're working the quarterdeck. If you weren't, you could get away with your standard duty uniform. The most hideous uniforms the officers had were these long sleeve blue shirts and long sleeve and blue trousers or slacks, and they just weren't really appealing to work in. I like khakis; I like those real well, but these were different. But I tell you what, that's the funny thing. That's one of the great things because there was so much confusion there during the changes, and then all of a sudden we went into the blue digis. But I think one of the most sobering experiences I had, I was looking for a uniform for that time period when we started into Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And of course, the Navy was issued anything that the Marine Corps was wearing. I did not know how many different camouflage patterns exist. There is a midriff. And the worst thing is I'm in this Army-Navy store, and I go, look, I need something for that period. And the guy says, well, that's antique. That's old shit. And I looked at him. I thought, you're joking, right? You're just rallying me. And no, he was serious. He said, I don't think we even carry that anymore. It's so old. And I'm thinking, just keep using that old word, kid. And but I mean, they were called chocolate chips, and I didn't realize that was the name of the pattern or name would be inherited. So, well, now I tell you what. Now, as I understand it, your wife has some interesting stories she'd like to share with us.
She sure does.
Okay,
and she's just waiting for beta. She's
all right.
Just waiting.
Well, now is the time. Tell me, what is your wife's name, Bob?
Angela.
Angela. So
yes.
Why don't you put Angela on, and let's see what she's got to share with us tonight.
Okay. This is Chris Lawson, and he's got two other people there.
Yep.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, Angela. Hey, on mic with me tonight is Jennifer. She's our podcast producer.
Hi, Angela.
Hi.
And my wife and podcast director, Heather.
Hello.
Hi. How are you doing?
We're great.
And we want to thank you for sharing this with us. I mean, we really, really do. And I know I hate to take this amount of time out of your evening, but I know you have some interesting things you want to share. So I'll tell you what, just go ahead and tell us what you experienced.
Okay. Well, the first story took place in Hawaii.
Okay.
On Oahu.
Mm-hmm.
At the Kaneohe Marine Base.
Okay.
I was a civilian, lived there for a little less than a year. My friend had returned from the first Persian Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
And had a couple of really young children, single parent.
Yes.
So I went over there to live on base and help take care of her kids while she was at work.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, the little girl was about 3 years old.
Yes.
And the little boy was 2 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you know how kids will have imaginary friends?
Sure.
Well, this little girl, I came upstairs to check on her one day, and I heard her talking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went in there, and I was like, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "Oh, my friend." And I said, "Who's your friend?" And she described this lady.
Yes.
With dark hair and dark eyes.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "Well, what's her name?" And she's like, "She doesn't want me to tell you." And I don't know if you remember or if you're into horror movies at all, but it immediately made me think of Amityville Horror.
Yes. I saw that. Yes. Yeah.
Right? So I was like, okay, and I made a mental note. We're just going to, like if she brings it up, okay, but I'm not bringing this up anymore. But
Sure.
I did tell her mom. Well, at the time, her mom's brother was visiting, and he was staying with us.
Yes.
And this guy has a very, very wicked sense of humor.
Okay.
And very low threshold for what he's willing to do for a joke.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I know that type.
So he knew about this story, right?
Yes.
And as things went on, she would mention things that like I'd hear her talking. I heard her probably maybe 2 other times, and when I tried to ask her about it, she'd say, "Well, it's a secret." And it was really kind of starting to get to me a little bit, because I didn't know whether it was, because they had been taken care of by virtual
strangers when her mom had to go overseas.
Yeah, be deployed. Yes.
Right, and really weren't very verbal, and I didn't know whether she was trying to process something,
Sure.
Right, yeah.
So I got all this in the background, and in the back of my mind. Well, one day I had another part-time job, and I was on another part of the base, and I was walking back.
Yes.
And this house sat on the corner, and had a fenced-in backyard and sliding glass doors that faced outside.
Yes.
And you could see right in the sliding glass doors into what would have been the living room and the stairway leading up to the second floor where all the bedrooms were. So I just, and it's dusk. I can see, but it's not dark outside, but it's getting there. And I really wasn't paying much attention. I was walking, and I just happened to see a little bit of movement.
Yes.
And I thought, well, that's weird, because no one was supposed to be home at the time. And I turned my attention to see what
Now this
caught
is
my
in the
eye.
sliding glass window.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh wow.
And I look across the backyard into the sliding glass windows, and there is a woman sitting on the stairs halfway up
Wow.
with her head face down with really long dark hair.
I knew you were going to say that. Oh, I got chills.
And but I didn't get chills at the time. I was mad.
You were mad.
because
Yeah, someone's
I
in
was-
that apartment. Yeah.
Honey, let me just tell you, I thought for sure he had found somebody,
Yeah.
and he was just ready to have me freak out and die laughing,
Right.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
go running around the front.
Because you think he's
and,
playing a trick on you. Okay.
Oh yeah, totally. So I go barreling in the house. I get the door unlocked. I go in. I'm like, I'm saying words I'm not going to say.
Oh.
And and I come into that when you come in the front door past the little dining area, the kitchen, straight
Yes.
into the living room, nothing. Turn to go up the stairs, nothing. Go all the way up. I clear all of the bedrooms, all of the closets. I look under the beds, the bathroom, everything. Nothing.
Oh.
My goodness
Nothing.
gracious.
No
Oh, my goodness.
no explanation. So,
Wow.
yeah, and no clue as to I have no explanation.
Right.
Is this
There's
base
no
housing?
story.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I wasn't. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So
you said what?
Was this base housing?
Yes.
Okay,
right on
so
the
it
base.
could be anybody. I mean, it's
Yep.
very hard. I don't know how good the records are because I don't know anything about that area. But I mean, the records probably aren't real good. I mean, there's personnel that go in and out there a lot. So God knows. I
It
mean,
could be anything, yeah.
Right.
exactly.
Wow.
Right.
Exactly.
I just have no explanation. But
I think you definitely gave Jennifer the
You
chills.
got
yeah.
me the chills.
Yeah.
yeah, it really kind of freaked me out, to be honest with you, because I wasn't thinking ghost at all.
No, you were so
Sure.
certain
Yeah.
he was playing a prank
And,
on
and
you.
that goes to say
Yeah.
too that it must have looked so realistic that you would never thought a ghost.
Right.
Yeah, no, it never even occurred to me.
Exactly.
Until you
Until
got
I
in the
couldn't
house and
find
couldn't find
anybody.
anybody. Yeah.
And that's
Because when
even
I came
worse because then you start
downstairs-
questioning everything.
Right.
Yes. I'm like, did I?
Oh, yeah.
I got 8 hours the night before. Like, I'm not tired. I haven't been out. It's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's not sunstroke or anything like that. And the sliding glass doors were locked
Wow.
from the inside.
So no way they could have been
I
open.
looked at everything. I looked at all the windows because I was convinced. I'm like, how did they get? I mean, I even started looking up in the ceilings and the closets. Like, is there an access panel? Because this is
Yeah.
the kind of guy he would go
Go to those
the
extremes.
distance. Yes,
Oh, yes.
yes.
Yeah, I
he
knew
had
all
a-
those guys after service they became firefighters. I guarantee you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then,
Wow.
go ahead.
Well, no,
Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you.
no. You're fine.
Yeah. You got
did-
another story then?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
This
please,
one
yes.
took place. Now that one took place in '91.
Okay, before
And
we
then
move
in-
off of that one, I got a question.
Sure.
You said now when the little girl talked to you, you said that she said it was a woman. But did this woman look Oriental, maybe, or Hawaiian, Polynesian? Could you tell?
All
I mean, you did see her
all
face, I
I remember
know.
her yeah, she just talked about how she had really dark hair and really dark eyes. I never saw the woman's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Never gave you
because,
her
like
name
I
or
said,
anything,
she was
though.
looking down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
So it could have been. That's possible.
Yeah, and maybe she
just-
didn't. she didn't want you to know because she felt then that, might compromise. So I guess that may have been the reason. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead with your next story. I had to ask that. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So the next story, in 92, I went over to Taiwan. I was only supposed to be visiting for about 3 weeks, but I ended up staying there for almost 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah.
Really liked it. Okay.
That's a different story. But anyway, I had a couple of gal pals that were hanging out at my house, and we decided to go. I think we decided to go into town to get ice cream or something like that. I can't remember. And we were being kind of ridiculous. We were young, and we were on a motor scooter, and there were 3 of us on the scooter. So we had one actually.
But I've seen that in Oriental countries. I've seen where people put a lot of, either a lot of people or a lot of things on the scooters. Yes.
Eight. I've seen a family with 8.
Yeah.
Wow.
No joke.
I believe you. I believe you.
So one of us was sitting on the floorboards, and then the other 2, one's driving and one's on the back. And we weren't going very far, and we weren't going very fast. We were just tootling.
Sure.
And down this one stretch of road going towards Kaohsiung proper, there were some towers. There was there's a long wall.
Yes.
And these towers, and we heard this whistling.
Okay.
And we looked up, and there was a soldier up in the tower, whistling at us and like waving. And we just kind of went, and we just kept going because he's just bored, whatever.
Sure.
So then on the way back, we didn't see him.
Okay.
We'd end up being in town for an hour or 2.
Yes.
So my husband at the time, I was married to a Taiwanese man at that time. He, I'm telling him about this story, and he's like, "Where did you say that was?" And I told him, and he said, "No, there's no way." And I said, now let me tell you. Yeah, that did happen. I said I wasn't by myself. April was there, Shari was there, and I'm telling you that's what happened. I said we weren't even paying attention. He was whistling. He said, "No, you don't understand." He said that's old military base, and he said that thing's been empty for decades.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
But that guy was in full uniform. He had some sort of rifle.
Yes.
The hat, the whole bit.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Was this an American base or was this a Taiwan base?
No, Taiwan base, Taiwanese base.
Okay, wow.
For sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so not a real long story, but
no, but a good one,
I mean,
just the same. Yeah. It actually, you may be interested at Christmas time. We're going to do a very special one called Shepherds, which will be aired prior to Christmas. I think we're doing probably on the 15th.
Probably 15th.
And so, if you want to listen to Ghost to Ghost on season 3, episode whatever it'll be, I don't know at that point, but yeah, it'll be the December 15th episode. It's very similar to that. Deals with a vacant base, so might be something of interest. So I can't thank you enough for sharing
you guys
tonight.
so much.
I mean, you and Bob both, I appreciate it very much. We're collecting stories. If you know anybody that has one that wants to come on air, have them give me a yell.
Now, these are all specifically needing to be related to the military, correct?
Sure. Well, related if you can. It can be by, we did accept one from a lady who is a military wife. And, I mean, within reason, if there's some connection, military connection, I mean, we're not going to be like the VA. We're not going to really hammer on, military connected issues. But if you can get close to that, we're interested in hearing from them. So if you know it, I mean, if you got another one, we'll listen,
Yeah.
I'll think about it.
Okay.
I don't think I have any more connected to the military. I've had some weird stuff happen in my life.
Well, hang on to those.
Do listener stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of episodes between now and the end of the year and next year. So, yeah, I mean, if you've got other episodes, we'll certainly take a look at what you've got. So, and I want to thank you again, you and Bob both, for tonight. We appreciate it very, very much.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this story is from Heather Lawson, our podcast director.
All right. This is not much of a story out of Tales from a Good Square, Volume 1 by Nick Orton. This isn't much of a story, but I was driving down a long road outside of Polk. It was 0400 in the morning and foggy. The woods surrounded the road. I went through a section of the road where the fog was clearing up and saw it. There was a skinwalker, clear as day, right beside my car. Suppose I had to guess around 10 feet tall, with a head that looked like a deer and long skinny arms easily bigger than the average man. It was walking the same way I was driving and looked over its shoulder right at me as I was going past. My heart started beating super fast, and I sped up until I was out of the woods. I don't believe in that stuff, but I saw what I saw. I only caught a glimpse, and I still second-guess what I saw. I never felt fear like that before. I'll admit, it seems a little far-fetched, but there's something off about that area, and I don't intend on going back through that road anytime soon.
Okay, this story is from Nick Orton's Grid Square Volume 1. It's titled Annapolis. I got a story from when I was a midshipman at the Naval Academy up in Annapolis. There are tons of people I went to school with and worked with who had weird experiences in Bancroft Hall, the dorm where all the students lived. Anyway, it's just about before the beginning of the fall semester of my senior year. I have a BS job on my battalion staff. I just watch the watch bills. And our commander wants to meet with the new staff members in preparation for the beginning of the new school year. The summer staff occupied the conference room we were generally used. So we used the empty office across the battalion conference hall. Nothing special about the office, just a square room with a couple of chairs and a desk. One door goes into the building's main hallway, and a window on the opposite wall. I get there a few minutes early and start catching up with my friends who are also on the staff. Everyone was returning from, leave and training, so none of us had seen each other in a few months. While I was staying there talking my back to the door, but a solid 8 foot into the room, I feel someone tap me on my right hip and whisper, "Hey," into my left ear, assuming it was either some of the staff members or a friend or whoever walked by and see me in the room. And I turned to say, "Hey, what's up?" But there's nobody either in the room, behind me, or visible through the door into the hallway. I know I'm too far into the room for someone to have been able to get past me before I turned around. And everyone else in the room was along the wall and the window, too far away to have done anything without being noticed. At this point, a shiver goes down my spine, and I turn back to the other people and ask if someone had been behind me. They all look at me confused and say no. I kept it together for the meeting, but I never went back into that office again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in our program, it's late, and we would like to dedicate to those of our family members that have fallen, and I would like to ask each of us to introduce those family members and discuss their service. So let's start out with you, Jennifer.
So I have several family members on all sides of my family who have served. My grandfather served in World War II in the South Pacific. That is my father's father. My father served in the Navy. My uncle served in the Navy. His brother served in the Navy. On my mother's side, her father served World War II in Belgium, which is why I have a Belgian grandmother, because she came over back to the States with him after the war. And then her brother served in the Navy. Her sister served in the Air Force. And my aunt's husband also served in the Air Force in Vietnam. And then their son is a veteran of the Marines and served in Afghanistan. None of them, thankfully, died in service during the war. However, my husband's great uncle, Sidney Verne, did serve in World War II in the Philippines, and there is actually a ridge in the Philippines named Verne's Ridge in honor of Sid, because he gave his life defending that ridge and defending his men in battle during World War II.
Heather, would you like to tell us about who you have in your family that has served and who has died in action for their or for their country?
Well, nobody's that I know of has died in action. Have several who have passed afterwards. My mother, she was a Marine. She has passed. My grandfather, he was in the Army. He was airborne infantry. He's passed. My uncle, he was the Air Force. He's gone. My dad, he's still around. He's still alive. He's a Marine. I have nephew who's a Marine. And
congratulations to them, because they just recently had a new child.
I just became new grand auntie again. Yay. And then if you go further back, I got several Civil War era veterans. And I may or may not be related to Custer. I have no definitive proof yet, but I have a Sarah Sally Custer in my direct lineage.
Outstanding. Well, I guess that leaves me, and we have other members of Spirit Team, which I wish could be here to tell us their backgrounds. My deceased father, James Lawson, was United States Navy. My uncle, Richard Lawson, was United States Army. My grandfather, John Lawson, was United States Army. So, and I don't, none of them, they're all deceased, but none of them, to the best of my knowledge, died in battle or in defense of the country. I'm sure I have some more as we go back, but that's, right off the top of my head, that is the quickest I can come up with. I guess at this point, the things I'd like everybody to remember is whether your family died in defense of the country or served and has passed on, it's a good time to remember. It's a good time to remember most all of our deceased. And for all those veterans who gave all, we say Godspeed and thank you for your sacrifice. So with that, I think we're going to go to a very special ghost story of the day.
Tonight's ghost story of the day is going to be a little different. We want to end with a letter that kind of exhibits the dedication and sacrifice that these men have given for their country. The last letter from Major Sullivan Ballou, written to his wife leading up to the Battle of First Bull Run, in which he would lose his life. Headquarters, Camp Clark, Washington, D.C., July 14, 1861. My very dear wife, indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. Our movement may be one of a few days' duration and full of pleasure, and it may be one of severe conflict and death to me. Not my will, but thine, O God, be done. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for any country, I am ready. I have no misgivings about, or lack of confidence in, the cause in which I am engaged. And my courage does not halter or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans upon the triumph of government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution, and I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. I cannot describe to you my feelings on this calm summer night when 2,000 men are sleeping around me, many of them enjoying the last, perhaps, before that of death, and I suspicious that death is creeping behind me with his fatal dart, am communing with God, my country, and thee. I know I have but few claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me, perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar, that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, nor that, when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive me my many faults and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness, and struggle with all the misfortune of this world to shield you and my children from harm. But I cannot. I must watch you from the spirit land and hover near you, while you buffet the storms with your precious little freight, and wait with sad patience till we part no more. But, O Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they love, I shall always be near you in the garish day and the darkest night amidst your happiest scenes and gloomiest hours, always. And if, in the soft breeze that fans your cheek, it shall be my breath, or the cool air cools your throbbing temples, it shall be my spirit passing by. It shall be my spirit passing by.
Thanks for listening to Ghost to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air, or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.